What up, y'all? You're listening to Sports Talk with Tropp, and I'm your host, Katie Tropp. Well, shit, yesterday's games, it was either it went down to the wire, came down to the last play of the game, or you just got your ass completely beat. So let's get right into it, beginning with the Munich, Germany game between the New York Giants and the Carolina Panthers. This was a game that actually went into overtime, so that tells you this one was a back-and-forth affair, and it actually was. I mean, like, the Panthers made it seem like right out the gate they were going to dominate this game from the start. But then all of a sudden the Giants in the second half, they started to get it going just a bit. Then in the fourth quarter, they were able to tie shit up. But the Panthers were able to take advantage of a big turnover by the Giants in the overtime. On the first play from scrimmage in overtime, the Giants fumbled the football. Gave the ball right back to the Panthers, and they were pretty much already set up in field goal position when they got the fumble, and they were able to just go ahead, set their field goal kicker up in a pretty decent spot. Panthers walk-off win 20-17, and it was a very sloppy game, I will say that. Pretty much the only standout from the game was running back Chuba Hubbard of the Carolina Panthers. He had 153 yards on the ground and a touchdown. So he was pretty much the big star of the game. But overall, this was a very slow-moving game. Giants kind of looked like they were just going to lose it the whole time, and that's what they ended up doing. Then we had the New England Patriots at the Chicago Bears, and this was one of the games where one of the teams got their asses beat. And that was the Chicago Bears. They could not score a freaking touchdown, and that has been their issue for the last, 3-4 games now? They just cannot score 7 points. It seems to be the most difficult thing for them to do. Patriots, on the other hand, just had a very solid day. They got the win 19-3. Drake May, he went 15 for 25, 184 yards and a touchdown. It was just really an overall solid day for them offensively, and their defense, man. They had Caleb Williams on his ass. They got 9 sacks in on Caleb Williams yesterday. That is just how crazy this game was and how inept the Chicago Bears offense has been the last, 3 or 4 games. Like I said, this offense cannot get it going, and it just continues against the shitty Patriots team. This Patriots team is not that good. And the Patriots looked like a pretty damn good team yesterday, at least against the Bears. Then we had the Buffalo Bills at the Indianapolis Colts. This was pretty much all Bills domination from start to finish. They got the win 30-20. Josh Allen went 22 for 37, 280 yards. He did have 2 interceptions on the day, though. So statistics-wise, that was actually probably Josh Allen's worst day, just because he's been doing pretty well on keeping the turnovers down. But so he added 2 to the interceptions column this week. But I mean, overall, the Colts are not looking good. They put Joe Flacco in a couple of weeks ago, and that experiment is just not working. I kind of feel like you might as well just throw Richardson back in there. He's only in his second year. It's technically probably going to be it's technically his rookie season, if you will, because he missed most of last year. But you might as well just throw that dude back in and see if he can at least gain some experience from some of these games, because so far the Colts look pretty inept on the offensive side of the ball. And Jonathan Taylor, he had 114 yards on the ground yesterday. So it's not like they're not getting production from certain guys. It's just Joe Flacco looks old. That's just, it is what it is. Then we had the Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Broncos actually wanted to make this a game. But unfortunately, this turned out like every single game has for the Kansas City Chiefs this season. And that is, for some odd reason, the opponent just cannot get the job done. And that is what happened with the Denver Broncos yesterday. I mean, they were dominating this game all the way until the fourth quarter. And in the fourth quarter, the Chiefs were able to get a go-ahead field goal, 16-14. And the Broncos actually start driving down the field. And it looks like they set themselves up in perfect field goal position, too. This is not a long one. This is one that you would call just it should go through. I mean, obviously, when it comes to field goals, you never know what's going to happen. But this is one where you look at it and go, yeah, They got this. Well, unfortunately, the Denver Broncos offensive line probably had their worst showing of the entire year in this field goal kick because, man, the Kansas City Chiefs just blew in, just basically knocked the entire offensive line down off their ass and blocked the field goal. And even though one guy blocked the field goal, if this one guy didn't block the field goal, there was probably 3 other dudes who would have blocked this field goal. That's how bad the offensive line was, quote, blocking on this play. It was just terrible. I mean, this is what should have been an easy go-ahead game-winning field goal for the Broncos, turns into a game-winning blocked field goal by the Kansas City Chiefs, and they just hang on 16-14. Excuse me. And the Chiefs, they just keep winning. I don't know how they keep doing it, but they just keep getting these just extra. I mean, it's just, I don't want to call them lucky breaks because you're winning for a reason. They're better team, obviously, but damn, it's just like every game they've had this season, they just barely hang on, and the other team always is fucking it up. It's just crazy to me. So we'll see what happens. I mean, that was another weird game from the Chiefs. They're undefeated, so good for them. I mean, cannot argue with 9-0, but what the fuck? Anyways, then we had the Atlanta Falcons at the New Orleans Saints. This was a very odd game because I don't think anybody expected the Saints to dominate this one. They did. They ended up getting the win 20-17. I mean, they really, in the second quarter is really when the Saints went off. But overall, this is what I think about the Falcons. They have a solid offense, and they can make the big plays, but they're just not that good. And this game is the primary example of that, is where it's like, what the fuck went on here, Atlanta? Like, you should easily beat the Saints. This Saints team is pretty much their second team because pretty much everybody on their team is injured at this point in time, other than Derek Carr, who they did get back, and he's actually been playing pretty well. But the Falcons just look terrible. And then Tyrann Mathieu, he actually got the big game-sealing interception for the Saints off of Kirk Cousins, and they won 20-17. So yeah, just a very random win by the Saints, but they still got it. And the Falcons, they just laid an egg. Then another close, crazy game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Washington Commanders. This was back and forth all the way to the bitter end. But this is why the Steelers traded for Russell Wilson. This is why they went with Russell Wilson over Justin Fields. And I'm one of those people who criticize them for it. But so far, the Russell Wilson experiment has actually been working out pretty well for the Steelers. And this was a game that was a perfect example of it. Because, I mean, even though offensively they were kind of struggling, they were kind of just chugging along. But that was the same thing with the Commanders. So the Steelers defense basically kept them in it. The Steelers offense was able to just do enough until the end, and Russell Wilson was able to, connect on the game-winning touchdown with the guy they just traded for, Mike Williams, at wide receiver. He was able to get and it was a crazy bomb too. It was only one of those type of passes that Russell Wilson completes where he just bops it up into the air, lands perfectly right into his receiver's hands, and the Steelers walk away with the win, 28-27. Still a good game from the Commanders, of course, but it's just Steelers just did that much more than the Commanders did in this one. But very, very good game from the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are now 7-2 on the season. And I never thought that was going to be the case, but it's looking like so far, I mean, we've still got about half of the season left to go, but it's looking like Mike Tomlin's going to have yet another winning season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you don't know, Mike Tomlin has yet to have a losing season. Now, anything could change, of course, right now. But so far, the Steelers are on pace to have another winning season under Mike Tomlin as coach. Then we had the San Francisco 49ers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was another crazy game. Came down to the very bitter end. And also a redemption story, basically, for the San Francisco 49ers kicker, Moody. He missed 3 big kicks in this game. And but he made the one that counted the most in the end, the game winner. The Niners got the win 23-20, and it was, I would say it was a shootout, really, between Baker and Brock Purdy. I mean, damn, these two guys, they were keeping their teams in it, especially Baker Mayfield. I got to tell y'all, I've been singing the praises of Baker Mayfield really since last season when he went to Tampa. As I continue to reiterate with him, I am a Texas Longhorns fan, and he went to Oklahoma. So I'm always rooting against these Oklahoma guys any chance I can get. But when you are playing the way Baker Mayfield is playing, it is hard for me to root against you. And what he did yesterday, this motherfucker stiff arms Nick Bosa, one of the best defenders in the fucking league. Bosa should have him wrapped up, thrown on the ground. Nah, Baker Mayfield is stiff-arming this motherfucker on a fourth down play that was huge for the Bucs. Unfortunately for the Bucs, though, their issue has been coming up short. When Evans and Godwin at least aren't in the game. I mean, they've come up short even with them a couple of times, but like especially since those two have been injured, once the Bucs hit the red zone, they seem to not be converting them into touchdowns and only converting the field goals. And that's what happened in this one. I mean, Baker drove him right down the field. They tie it up at 20, but then Brock Purdy, he basically was doing what Baker was doing, just getting away from this Tampa defense, finding any dude he can to make the big play. And the Niners were able to get the game-winning field goal, 23-20. And like I said, Brock Purdy, solid day, 25 for 36, 353 yards, and 2 touchdowns. On the opposite side of things, I will say, running back Bucky Irving for the Tampa Bay Bucs, dude seems to be getting stronger each and every week. He had 73 yards on the ground and a touchdown, but he seems to be really starting to show he's a very reliable running back. He's starting to show that he's going to be a huge piece of this offense, and he's putting up some big numbers so far. So definitely a running back I had no idea about until this season, and he's playing very well. And like I said, Baker played a great game yesterday, but unfortunately the Bucs fell short in that one to the 49ers. Then we had the Minnesota Vikings at the Jacksonville Jaguars in probably the weirdest game of the day. I mean, I feel like we all expected the Vikings to just demolish the Jaguars in this one. I mean, first of all, Trevor Lawrence, it was announced he's not going to be playing in this game, so they got Mac Jones at quarterback for the Jaguars, so they're even worse. And then the Vikings, they got their whole team back in play. Even T.J. Hawkinson, their tight end, he's back. So it's looking like this team should just roll up to Jacksonville and just roll right over them, and they didn't. They barely got the win 12-7. I mean, Sam Darnold, he was throwing interceptions like no other yesterday. As a matter of fact, he had 3 interceptions on the day, and in the red zone, too. I mean, that's where some of these interceptions for Darnold are starting to happen a lot lately. So is this going to start to become a problem with the Vikings? I mean, they are in a tight division, so these wins are going to matter. And good for them. They got the win. They hung on to this one. But if they were playing any halfway decent team, they probably would have lost yesterday's game. But they did not. They were able to beat the Jaguars. You know, Mac Jones had a terrible Mac Jones type of day. He actually ended up throwing this terrible late-game interception as well that he did not need to throw, but he did. And, the Vikings just barely got by on this one, and the Jaguars look like the Jaguars. Then we had the Tennessee Titans at the Los Angeles Chargers. This one went as expected. The Chargers dominated the Titans for the most part, 27-17. The Titans kind of made it close just a bit. But, I mean, the first half, it was a little bit closer. I mean, going into halftime, it was 13-7, so it kind of looked like, oh, my God, are the Titans going to make this an interesting game? Then the Chargers took off in the second half and really never looked back. Quentin Johnston, he scored another touchdown, so it kind of looks like he's emerging as the top receiver for Justin Herbert to go to. And Gus Edwards, he scored a couple of touchdowns yesterday, so Herbert's finding some new guys. He doesn't really seem to have a go-to guy just yet, but he seems to be finding his guys regardless. And, I mean, the Titans are just terrible, so I didn't expect them to win. I'm honestly shocked that they have 2 wins on the season. So, Yeah, didn't really expect anything other than what happened in yesterday's game, other than the actual result. Then we had the New York Jets at the Arizona Cardinals. And wow, the Jets season has just been atrocious. I feel like if you're a Jets fan, you're in the same boat as me as a Cowboys fan, where this season honestly just cannot end soon enough. I mean, here we are at the midway point, and both of us, Cowboys and Jets fans, are just like reeling. Our teams can't score. And that's the case right here with the Jets. I mean, they just looked terrible offensively yesterday. And even defensively, I mean, their defense has pretty much been their backbone over the years. And their defense was terrible. They got completely demolished by Kyler Murray yesterday, who went 22 for 24. That's right. He only missed 2 passes yesterday. 266 yards through the air, 1 touchdown through the air, and 3 touchdowns rushing on the ground. So Kyler Murray had a huge day, and the Cardinals got the big win, 31-6. I mean, the Cardinals' defense is not that good. Well, the New York Jets' offense made the Cardinals' defense look like the best defense in the fucking league yesterday. So the Jets their season just keeps on looking more and more terrible. Just as my Cowboys do. And since we're talking about my Cowboys, let's move on to the next game. The Philadelphia Eagles at the Dallas Cowboys. The Eagles demolished the Cowboys 34-6. As I said, this season could not end fast enough. I mean, shit, even watching yesterday's game, I remember it was the 3rd fucking quarter. And I was like, oh my God, we still have 2 quarters to go. Then it gets to the 4th quarter. I'm like, oh my God, like, this whole season just is dragging and dragging and dragging. And guess what? The Cowboys play next Monday against the Houston Texans. So that's going to be another long, forever game, because it's probably going to be the Cowboys getting their asses beat, just like in this one. I mean, the only thing I could say about this game in particular is at least we didn't let Saquon Barkley go off. Everybody else had a good game, but Saquon Barkley was held to 66 yards, so that was arguably like his worst game of the season. But Jalen Hurts, 14 for 20, 202 yards, 2 touchdowns. A.J. Brown, 109 yards. The defense actually didn't look too terrible yesterday. The defense, Trayvon Diggs, he had an interception in the red zone, which was huge. Micah Parsons was back, made some big plays yesterday, so it really wasn't the defense that was the problem. It was the offense. And as I was saying last week, you Dak haters get to see exactly what we look like without Dak, and that is even fucking worse. Because Dak is not the problem. Everything else about our offense is the problem. Hell, yesterday Cooper Rush wasn't even really rushed. The dude had lots of fucking time and still could not complete a goddamn pass. This Cowboys team is so fucking pathetic. It's just terrible. And I still don't know how Mike McCarthy still has a job today. I know it doesn't change anything if he's fired. As a matter of fact, this is what I think would happen. If the Cowboys end up firing Mike McCarthy at any point in midway through the season, we're just probably going to make shit-ass Mike Zimmer, the defensive coordinator, the interim coach. So we just look stupider anyways. But Mike McCarthy, we've gotten our asses beat in every single game this season except for week 1 against the Cleveland Browns. That's the one and only game the Cowboys have looked good in. Even the other 2 wins against the Giants and the Pittsburgh Steelers, those were barely wins, and we were kind of getting our asses beat a little bit. But the other games, they haven't even been fucking close. Even though some of the scores have wound up close, they ain't even been close. This team is terrible. Mike McCarthy should just be fired now at this point. If I were Jerry Jones, I would have fired him yesterday after the fucking game. But he didn't do that. It doesn't sound like he's going to do that. He's even said, I've regretted every time I fired a coach midway through the season. So it looks like we're unfortunately sticking with Mike McCarthy the rest of the way. But I gotta ask, what happens next week if we lose to the Texans 42-0? And then we've got Washington the following week. Then we lose to them 35-6. Then it's like we're on a 6-game losing streak and we can't even score a touchdown. So you're telling me we're going to keep Mike McCarthy after that? I mean, like I keep saying, I know firing the coach is not turning around the season, but this is not working. It's just not. So, But then at the same time, the way I'm also looking at the rest of the season that's dragging on for fucking ever is, hey, at least we're going to have a good draft pick next year. And so, honestly, the Cowboys benefit from not winning another game at all this season. But Jesus Christ, they can't even score a fucking touchdown at this rate. It is just pathetic. It's just terrible. Everything about this team is terrible. And this season could not end soon enough if you are a Dallas Cowboys or a New York Jets fan, because these two teams are mirroring each other at this current point in time. Like, we just cannot have one good game. It's just terrible. Eagles, on the other hand, they didn't look that dominating. I mean, yes, they scored 34 points. But to start, I mean, the Cowboys actually looked like they were in this game. It was just the third quarter kind of got away from them. And then also the Eagles, they scored a touchdown right before halftime as well. They shouldn't have. It was kind of one of those stupid things where the Cowboys just lose and shit the bed, as they always do. But I mean, overall, the Eagles were not really playing this game that well. So they still don't really impress me. But hey, they kicked the shit out of the Cowboys, so congratulations. Then Sunday Night Football was a crazy game between the Detroit Lions and the Houston Texans. It felt like neither team wanted to win this game last night. It was turnover central by both teams. Jared Goff had 5 interceptions. And CJ Stroud had 2 interceptions and a fumble. Or was it 3 interceptions? And regardless, that's how many turnovers there were. I'm losing track of how many there were because there were so many. I mean, to start the second half, the Texans come right out the gate and throw an interception. It was just, there were red zone turnovers. It was like nobody wanted to win this game last night. But finally, the Lions, they just started to chip away at this lead because they were down. They were getting their asses beat, but they just kept chipping away at the lead. They kept making it more and more difficult for CJ Stroud. They kept getting the turnovers when they needed to. And then Jared Goff and their ground attack, they just made the few plays that they needed to make to get themselves into field goal range to kick the game-winning field goal to win 26-23. And let me tell you, game-winning field goal, this was literally by inches. I mean, you look at the replay on this, it is like not even an inch between the football and the goalpost. That's how freaking close it was in this game last night. So Detroit they just keep winning. Them and the Chiefs, man, they just keep winning in the most odd, weird ways, but it doesn't matter how you win. You walk away with the win. And what I got to say about this Lions team, it's crazy because I know a lot of us all laughed at Dan Campbell when he took over for the coach as the Detroit Lions. And in his introductory press conference, all of us were laughing at him, especially over the slogan when he said, "I want my guys, when we fall down, we get back up and we bite a kneecap off as we're coming back up." That is how this team plays. They literally play like they are biting your fucking kneecaps off. And it's crazy how we go from laughing at that to that is at their actual identity, and they're winning this way. And like I keep saying, hell is going to freeze over if the Detroit Lions not only make the Super Bowl, but win the Super Bowl. And this team, to me, is easily right in line. They keep playing this way. They are winning a Super Bowl. All right, so let's turn to Monday Night Football in the last game of Week 10. We have the Miami Dolphins at the Los Angeles Rams. Right now, the Rams are a 2.5-point favorite. The Rams have been a very odd team this year, but they are in a very tight division, so this win is definitely going to matter for them if they're able to get it. Miami, on the other hand, they have not found an identity at all. Even before Tua got injured and now that Tua is back, they seem to start, they're getting better offensively, but they still don't have an identity. They're still not that good, and they're still not legitimate in any way, shape, or form. They're just not good. Whereas the Rams, it's more just a bunch of injuries and a questionable defense that is their issue. But with Matthew Stafford, who's still playing at a high level, still making the big plays, they've got Cooper Kupp in there. When he's not injured, he's making the big plays. You got Puka Nacua as well. He's making big plays also. You got Williams in the backfield. So I just look at the Rams as a better team, a much more put together team than the Dolphins. The Rams at least have some type of identity. They have veteran leadership. They're guys who know how to win. They've got a coach who's proven himself as well. Whereas the Dolphins, like I said, they've just been in disarray all season. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if this is an offensive shootout. As a matter of fact, I kind of expect it to be an offensive shootout because both of these defenses are very mediocre. And like I said, Miami, the last 2 weeks, offensively, they actually look pretty decent. The Rams also offensively look really good. So I do expect this to be kind of a shootout between the two, but I think the Rams are the better team. The win matters more, and I've got the Rams winning this one 35-28. Now let's move on to the NBA and the Tropp 10 NBA power rankings for this week. We're going to be talking about a couple of different teams, but overall, the results are not really changed at this moment in time, except for number one. I had to move the Cleveland Cavaliers up to number one this week. They are 11-0 on the season, and they are blowing everybody out of the water. They're not just winning like close matchups. They are pretty much annihilating everybody. They are pretty much in first place in all the categories right now at this point in time. And they're beating good teams. They're beating bad teams. They're just doing what they need to do. And this week, they took out the Milwaukee Bucks, the New Orleans Pelicans, the Golden State Warriors, and the Brooklyn Nets. Right now, they are first in the league in field goal percentage, knocking down 53% of their shots. Right now, they lead the league in three-point percentage. They're knocking 42% down of their three-point shots. And they also lead the league in scoring, averaging 123 points per game. So Cleveland Cavaliers are just dominating in all different ways, shapes, and forms. So I had to put them at number one. Then at number two this week on my Tropp 10 NBA power rankings, the Boston Celtics obviously did not fall that far because they are still one of the top teams in the league. They're 9-2 on the season, and their only loss this week was to the Golden State Warriors, and a very close one. But they took out the Atlanta Hawks, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Milwaukee Bucks this week. Jason Tatum still he's dominating in every single category basically for this team. He's averaging 31 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, 5 assists per game, and 2 steals per game. So he's just dominating in every single way, shape, and form, and is just the backbone of this team. And the Boston Celtics, even though they've got 2 losses on the season, they still look like one of the best teams in the league. Then at number 3 on my Tropp 10 NBA power rankings of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They are 8-2 on the season. This past week, they beat the Orlando Magic and the Houston Rockets, but lost to the Denver Nuggets and the Golden State Warriors. But they took an even bigger L this week with the loss of Chet Holmgren. He has fractured his hip. He just fractured it over the weekend, and it looks like he's going to be out at least the next 2 months, which is a big blow to this team because he has been having one hell of a season. But unfortunately, once I get down the line of these Tropp 10 NBA power rankings, we're going to hear about a lot of injuries in the NBA this week because he's not the only one. But this is a huge blow to the Thunder. But they are still having a solid season with SGA. He's, of course, continuing to do what he did last season and the season before and really just dominating for this team. But you got to wonder if this Chet Holmgren injury is really actually going to take the wind out of their sails or if they're just going to keep on winning because they are still a damn good team. Then at number 4 on my Tropp 10 NBA power rankings of the Phoenix Suns, overall record of 8-2. This past week, they beat the Philadelphia 76ers, the Miami Heat, the Dallas Mavericks, and lost to the Sacramento Kings. They also suffered an injury. Kevin Durant, unfortunately, has a calf injury right now. His injury it looks like it's only going to be like a 2-week thing. So it doesn't look like it's going to be anything major. Bradley Beal has also suffered an elbow injury, so he's missed a couple of games as well. But I kind of feel like we already knew that was going to be the case with this team. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see Devin Booker get injured here pretty soon as well. But overall, the Phoenix Suns look like one of the top teams in the Western Conference, that's for sure. They are scoring everybody out of the building. And they're even playing decent on defense as well. So Phoenix, even though they're suffering through the injuries, they look well. Durant, even prior to the injury, was playing at an MVP level. So it's going to be interesting to see if this calf injury slows him down a bit, but it doesn't look like it's anything major, at least at this point. So Phoenix still looking pretty solid. Then at number 5 on my top 10 NBA power rankings of the Golden State Warriors. Overall record of 8-2. This past week, they beat the Washington Wizards, the Boston Celtics, and the Oklahoma City Thunder, but lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Golden State Warriors, to me, are probably the biggest surprise. I don't know why, because they still have the championship pedigree. They still have the good coach. They still have Steph Curry. They still have Draymond Green. So they still have a lot of good guys. I just kind of expected them to fall back just a bit. But so far, they're actually dominating. They're beating good teams. They're beating bad teams. And they're one of the top teams in the Western Conference. Right now, they actually lead the league in rebounds, averaging 48 rebounds per game. Right now, they're second in the league, averaging 121 points per game. So they're really getting it done. Steph Curry actually, he's having a solid year as well. So, really, you look at the Golden State Warriors, and it just kind of looks like they are going to be back at it again and making noise throughout the rest of the season. Then at number 6 on my top 10 NBA power rankings are the Denver Nuggets. Overall record of 7-3. And this team, they started off the season very slow, but right now they are on a 5-game winning streak. This past week, they beat the Toronto Raptors, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Miami Heat, and the Dallas Mavericks. And Nikola Jokic, he is leading this team in every single possible category. He's averaging 30 points per game, 14 rebounds per game, 12 assists per game, 2 steals per game, a block per game. And he's also leading the team with 56% field goal percentage as well. So he is having another MVP type season. But it's funny just because, like I said, the Nuggets started off the season slow, and now they're really just walloping everybody, starting to get better. As a matter of fact, as you could tell, the NBA power rankings this week are very, very Western Conference heavy because the Western Conference teams are really looking good, and they're really dominating right now, whereas the Eastern Conference teams not looking so good at this point in time. And the Nuggets starting to get back in championship form, but we'll see what they got the rest of the season because they are in a tough division. Then at number 7 on my top 10 NBA power rankings are the Memphis Grizzlies. Overall record of 7-4. This past week, they lost to the Brooklyn Nets, but beat the Lakers, the Washington Wizards, and the Portland Trail Blazers. Jaren Jackson, he is really coming out of nowhere and really being kind of the lead guy right now for this team. Because once again, here's another injury. Ja Morant, unfortunately, he injured his hip. Looks like it's not going to be anything debilitating throughout the whole season, but it is going to be something that keeps him out a couple of weeks, at least for now. But he was starting to get it going, starting to get back into his old form. But this Memphis Grizzlies team is actually playing pretty decent basketball right now and looking like one of the top teams in the league, even despite that Ja Morant injury. Then at number 8 on my top 10 NBA power rankings are the Los Angeles Lakers. Overall record of 6-4. This past week, they lost to the Detroit Pistons and the Memphis Grizzlies, but beat the Philadelphia 76ers and the Toronto Raptors. LeBron actually had a crazy game against the Raptors yesterday. In only 35 minutes, he had a triple-double in which he scored 19 points, 16 assists, and 10 rebounds. So for his age to still be playing at that type of level, it is just crazy. But it's really all about Anthony Davis for me. I mean, Anthony Davis is having a monster season. Unfortunately, he once again hurt his eye yesterday, which has actually been a problem for him over the last couple of years. I mean, last year it was the same thing. He got hit in the face quite a few times, and it cost him a few games. And he's apparently got to go see an eye specialist now. So we'll see if that ends up being an issue, because if there's no Anthony Davis, there are all problems for the Lakers, because he is the backbone. And even though LeBron was the reason why we got the huge win last night, Anthony Davis is the backbone of this team. He is averaging about 32 points per game right now. That leads the league, and he is having a monster year to start. So we definitely need him in, and hopefully him continuing to get hit in the face is not an issue, because it was last season. Then at number 9 on my top 10 NBA power rankings are the Minnesota Timberwolves. Overall record of 6-4. This past week they took out the Charlotte Hornets, the Chicago Bulls, and the Portland Trail Blazers, but lost to the Miami Heat. But Julius Randle fitting right in. He's adding a lot of defense, but he's averaging 21 points per game, 7 rebounds per game, and 5 assists per game. So he's really adding in a lot to this team. Anthony Edwards continues to be Anthony Edwards and take over games as he needs to. But I'm liking how I see how Julius Randle really fits in with this team. I felt like on the defensive side of the ball. That was a huge issue for the Timberwolves last year. And now Randall is not only adding in the defense, but he's adding in that extra bit of offense that they need. And he's looking like a really good player who's fitting in and who could potentially take the Minnesota Timberwolves to another level this year. And then rounding out the Tropp 10 NBA power rankings this week, I have the Los Angeles Clippers, overall record of 6-4. They are on a 4-game winning streak right now. And this past week, they took out the San Antonio Spurs, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Sacramento Kings, and the Toronto Raptors. It's weird because there's no Kawhi Leonard. He hasn't played one game yet this season. Shocker. But James Harden is actually having a solid regular season, as he normally does. It's the playoffs where he chokes. But the Clippers right now looking pretty decent without Kawhi. Who knows how long it's going to last. One thing I will say is it's so nice to have the Clippers stank out of the Lakers arena, and now the Clippers have their own stadium. So congratulations for getting the fuck out of our stadium, because we don't want you there anymore. Your stench and your loser stank just put a burden on our stadium, and we just did not need you there anymore. So thankfully the Clippers have their own place to lose and their own banners to not hang. But right now, Clippers are playing pretty decent, but it probably isn't going to last because they're not that good. So we have the NBA Cup starting this week. This is the in-season tournament that they started last season, in which the Lakers won. They won the inauguration of it. So we have the second year of the NBA Cup. Begins tomorrow, November 12th, and runs through December 3rd. Basically, there's going to be 3 different groups in the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. Are going to be battling against each other, and then it's going to break down into quarterfinals, semifinals, and then finally the finals, and then there's going to be a champion of it all. Actually, it was a pretty interesting event last year. I did think it was ridiculous that the Lakers hung a banner for this, especially because we went nowhere last year, but whatever. A win's a win, and these wins do, except for the championship, they do count towards your regular season, so it just makes it a little bit more interesting during the regular season. So with that being said, I'm actually going to make my predictions for this NBA Cup. It's difficult to do so with the way they break it down, so I'm just going to basically say who I think is going to win each group and the wild card, and then who's going to go to the championship round and win it all. So for the Western Conference, in Group A, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Sacramento Kings, the Houston Rockets, and the Portland Trail Blazers. In this group matchup, I've got the Sacramento Kings coming out of this one. The Kings have had a very up and down season so far. They've had their strides where they look really good, but they've also had their lows where they just look really bad, especially in a game this past week where they just didn't look really good. But, I mean, the thing about this NBA Cup is you just never know what's going to happen, and especially because it's so early in the season. So I'm just going with the Kings in this one. I just feel like they're built to win in a tournament, and I just feel like I look at them and it's like I feel like them and the Timberwolves are probably going to be the best 2 teams in this 5-team matchup. But I've got the Kings coming out of this one. Then in West Group B, we have the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Phoenix Suns, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Utah Jazz, and the San Antonio Spurs. I expect these 5 teams to annihilate the crap out of each other. They're all really good teams. 3 of the teams are the top teams in the league right now. And the Spurs, while they're just terrible, they still have Wemby, and they still are actually playing pretty well. It's just they're not getting the wins. But in this group, of course, I'm leaning towards the Lakers because I'm a Laker fan, and I can do that. But I do expect this to be a difficult group that just beats up on each other throughout the course of the group play, just because they are all good teams. Well, not all of them, but even Utah and San Antonio, I feel like they're very capable of beating Oklahoma City, Phoenix, and the Lakers in just one-game matchups. And then in Western Conference Group C, we have the Denver Nuggets, the Dallas Mavericks, the New Orleans Pelicans, the Golden State Warriors, and the Memphis Grizzlies. And this is another stacked group because you got Denver, Dallas, and even though the Pelicans aren't doing that great, they're still a pretty decent team. Golden State and Memphis, these 5 teams are going to beat each other up as well. I'm leaning towards Denver just because I think they're the better team. They've got Jokic. They know how to win. So I've got them. And then the wild card spot in the Western Conference, because there's only one wild card spot. The winners are whoever wins each group, and then one wild card spot. So I'm going with Oklahoma City in this. Now, this was before I made these predictions last night before the Chet Holmgren injury was announced. So I wouldn't be shocked if Oklahoma City, I was mostly banking on him for this win because I really do like how his season has gone so far. But even outside of Chet Holmgren, this Oklahoma City Thunder team is still good, still solid. So I'm leaning towards them in the wild card to win the wild card spot there. And then turning to the Eastern Conference, Group A, we have the New York Knicks, the Orlando Magic, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Brooklyn Nets, and the Charlotte Hornets. I've got the New York Knicks coming out of this one just because the other team's just not really that good or that reliable. Then Eastern Conference Group B, we have the Milwaukee Bucks, the Indiana Pacers, the Miami Heat, the Toronto Raptors, and the Detroit Pistons. I've got the Indiana Pacers coming out of that group. And then in Eastern Conference Group C, we have the Boston Celtics, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Chicago Bulls, the Atlanta Hawks, and the Washington Wizards. I'm leaning towards Cleveland just because they are playing great, but I wouldn't be shocked if Boston's the one who comes out of it. But I'm going with Cleveland in this one just because I want to go with Cleveland. But for the wild card spot, I do have the Boston Celtics taking that last wild card spot. So the championship round, I have it being the Los Angeles Lakers versus the Cleveland Cavaliers, with the champion being the Los Angeles Lakers because I am a Lakers fan. And also they won it last year and they are good in tournament play. And, honestly, it's not like it really matters who wins this in-season tournament. It's really just more to, try and gain a little bit more interest before Christmas, because that's just kind of how basketball season is usually most people don't start paying attention until Christmas. But I will say, last year when they did the NBA Cup, it actually was a success. More people did pay attention. More people were interested. And it also felt like the players, the coaches, and the teams were more interested as well because, we've seen it over the years, this whole sitting players because they're not injured, but we're trying to make sure they don't get injured and yada, yada, yada. So this actually does raise the level of competition in all ways. And it at least mattered last year. So we'll see how it goes this year. But it definitely made things a bit interesting just to get people's attention on basketball prior to Christmas. All right, y'all. Enjoy the rest of the week of sports, and I will talk to you on Wednesday.